Hello, Grace class. Today is our fifth and final session in the 1000 Gifts study. I pray that you all have gotten something that was needed from this study. We've looked at how Thanksgiving, even in the hard, can help us see God's grace in all the moments of life, and in that we can have joy. In all this, we can live abundantly. I hope you've taken up the challenge of naming the gifts, of listing the everyday moments of God's grace that are gifts to us. I also challenge you to take up the hard moments and to dig into them to find the gifts. We may not think of the hard, the suffering in life as a gift, but if we remember that those moments are God's will, we name even these as gifts from God. Maybe you've taken up the challenge of stacking stones, of making a memorial to the greatness of God. This memorial could have been, like we discussed, a journal. It could be a scrapbook. It could even be the literal stacking of stones like the Israelites did. For me, my prayer journal has been a memorial to God's greatness and His love and His faithfulness. Many years ago, I began a journal listing the prayer requests that I wanted to remember for family and friends. As the years went on, I realized that this journal had become more than just a prayer list. It was a journal of answered prayer. It became the reminder of God's love and provision for not just myself, but for friends and family. If you've taken up any of these challenges, I pray that you will continue them even after we finish the study. So this is the last session, and it covers the last two chapters, chapter 10 and 11 of the book 1000 Gifts by Ann Voskamp. And chapter 10 was entitled Empty to Fill. Eucharisteo, Thanksgiving, helps us to let go and open our hands so that we can receive all of God's gifts. If we then close our hands trying to hold on to these gifts, keeping the grace clenched tight, then the joy within us dies. Our study guide compared the waters of the Jordan River to this. The Jordan flows down into two bodies of water, the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. The Sea of Galilee receives the fresh water of the Jordan River, and life is abundant there. The Jordan also gives this fresh water to the Dead Sea, but there's no life thriving there. The difference? The Dead Sea only takes, but does not give. The Sea of Galilee receives the fresh water from the Jordan in the north and gives as the Jordan continues to flow south. The Dead Sea receives the same water, but has no outlet. One gives and lives, the other holds on and dies. So what does this have to do with our living an abundant life? Go with me to John 13, verses 2 through 5. During supper, when the devil had already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garment and, taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And we'll move down to verses 12 through 15. When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garment and resumed his place, he said to them, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you." So what determines if we have a fulfilling, meaningful life, the abundant life that we all want to live? A quote from Anne in her book says, "Gratitude for the blessings that expresses itself by becoming the blessing." That's how we can have the abundant life. Jesus shows in the breaking and giving of the bread and in the washing of the feet that Eucharisteo is not just thanks for the grace, but giving grace away. It is the heart open to receive grace with thanks, then giving grace out into the world. Eucharisteo means to give thanks. Give is a verb, an action, something we do. To give the thanks away so that our lives become the blessing. To quote Anne again, she said, I am blessed. I can bless. Imagine I could let him make me the gift. I could be the joy. When our service is for people, we can get weary and frustrated. We can begin to think we are owed appreciation for our efforts. We can even look for applause or rewards. But if Christ is the center of our service, when the laundry, dishes, cooking, cleaning is done not in our strength, but in his, all these things can become our worship and a song of thanks to him. Mark 10:45, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. As we give thanks, we can see God giving of himself, giving him of himself to us. In this, we see God choose us. He chooses us to live the full life. We can see how he loves us in the many gifts, the moment by moment gifts that he gives. We are made aware of God's presence in all the moments of life, and we can commune with him, oneness with him right in the mundane of the everyday. John 14:20 and 21. Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he is who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. John 15:4. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. Perhaps this is the gift that God longs for in return for the many unending gifts that he gives us. Perhaps it's oneness, union with him. 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Give thanks in all circumstance, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Skip back up to verse 16 in 1 Thessalonians 5. It says, rejoice always. Verse 17, pray without ceasing. In these things we can see and have unbroken communion with God in the everyday, giving thanks for all the gifts that he gives. So continue to count the gifts and give thanks. And in this, see his grace and have the deep joy that only God can give. Be blessed and then be the blessing. In the thankfulness, have communion with God in the everyday, moment by moment. Let this be your worship to him. I can't wait to see most of you at church on Sunday. I know some of you have been watching this that don't attend our church. I hope you've been blessed by it. I hope that God has spoken to you wherever you were needed to have something spoken into your life. I really am looking forward to seeing my grace class again, ladies. And when we can resume Sunday school, we'll have a new study. And if any of you that have been watching would like to join us, we would love to have you.